She loaded the wagon in the dark. 14 blankets, folded with the precision of someone who had done this enough times that the motion required no. Mara Finch had been up since 4, the lamp kept low so as not to wake Lily, and she counted as she worked, because counting was the only honest thing she could do with the arithmetic that had been sitting at the back of her mind since Sunday. 14 blankets. She needed to sell 9 to make the month. She had never sold more than 6 in a single market day. She loaded the 14th. She climbed up to the wagon seat. She clucked the mare forward into the dark, toward Copper Falls, toward the October Saturday market, toward the same table she had set up in the same spot along the south side of the square for 7 years, and she did not let herself think past the next 4 hours, because there was no useful thinking to be done beyond them. Behind her, in the wagon bed, 14 blankets rode in the dark in folded silence. They were the finest things she owned. If that woman already has your heart, subscribe to this channel right now and stay until the very end. Drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. Because what happens at that market table in Copper Falls, Kansas before noon on this particular Saturday is going to change the arithmetic of Mara Finch's life entirely, and not in any way she is going to see coming. Stay with me. The arithmetic had been wrong for 7 years. Not wrong the way mistakes are wrong, but wrong the way water running downhill is wrong. Not through error, but through the patient, daily pressure of circumstances that do not ask permission. Daniel Finch had died in the October of 1879, a week after the harvest, of the kind of sudden thing that gives no warning and leaves no time for preparation. And he had left Mara the house on Birch Street, a loom his grandmother had brought from Ohio, and a daughter named Lily, who was 3 years old and had her father's serious eyes and her mother's hands already long-fingered at 3, already reaching for things she wanted to understand. Mara had taught herself to weave in the winter after Daniel died, not from grief. She had a child and a mortgage and no time for grief to be the main thing, but from the loom sitting there and the cold coming on and the understanding that she had 2 years' worth of skills and needed 3. She had learned from a book and from a woman named Dora Phelps 2 streets over who wove for pleasure, and who taught Mara in the evenings on Tuesdays and Thursdays until Mara surpassed her, which took 4 months, after which Dora had said simply, "You have a gift for this," and Mara had filed it away in the place where she kept things that were true but not yet useful. It became useful. She was precise with color and unerring with tension, and what came off her loom had a quality that was visible to anyone paying attention, a fineness in the weave, a weight and drape that other blankets did not have. She knew this. Lily knew this, with the uncomplicated certainty of a child who has grown up watching something made and knows what made looks like. The market did not know this, or if it did not pay accordingly. She had set her prices at what the market would bear, which was the practical advice of every woman who sold at the Copper Falls Square, and which she had followed without questioning for 6 years before. Lily, at 9 years old, reviewing the market ledger with the focused attention she gave to most things, had looked up and said, "Mama, you're selling them for less than the wool cost." Not quite, but close. The 7th year she had raised her prices slightly and lost 3 customers, and gained 2 new ones, and the net was approximately even, which told her the market was elastic in ways she had not previously tested. She had been thinking about testing it further when the Saturday in October arrived, the one that would divide her life the way a plumb line divides a wall, into what was before and what came after. She had the tables set up before 8, the blankets folded and stacked in the order she always arranged them, the heavier winter weight at the back, the medium weight in the middle, the finer pieces at the front where the colors showed best. Lily was at the near end of the table, sitting on the stool she brought every week, doing the arithmetic in her school copybook that she brought to market for the waiting hours. She had already assessed the neighboring tables and given Mara a summary of the competition, which was Lily's habit, and which Mara received with the same expression she gave most of Lily's assessments, the expression of a woman who knows her daughter is right and finds it useful. The morning moved the way market mornings moved, browsing the occasional sale, the women who handled the blankets and set them down, the men who didn't stop at textile stalls. She sold 2 by 9 o'clock and 1 more just after, and she was doing the revised arithmetic in her head. 6 more needed, and the crowd thinning already toward the south end, when she became aware that someone had stopped at the table and was not moving on. He was a large man, not young, with the particular weathered patience of someone who spends most of his time outdoors and has learned to be still in it. He was holding one of the medium-weight blankets, the rust and cream one with the double severn pattern, and he was not holding it the way people usually held her blankets, which was a quick assessment of thickness and price. He was holding it the way a person holds a thing they are genuinely looking at, turning it in his hands, running a thumb along the selvage, checking where the warp met the weft at the corner. Mara watched him for a moment. "The selvage is straight," she said. He looked up. "I can see that." Not rudely, simply. He had a direct manner, the kind that came from not having learned to soften statements for polite company and not particularly caring that he hadn't. "How long does one of these take?" "The medium weight, 4 days. 5 if the pattern is complex." He looked at the blanket again. "This pattern, 4.5. He set it down. He picked up the one beside it, the deep blue with the interlocking diamond border, which was the piece she was proudest of from the last month's work, and had been hoping someone would actually see. He looked at it for a long time. "What's your price on this one?" he said. She told him. The real price, not the apologetic reduced figure she had been quoting for 6 years, but the number she and Lily had arrived at together 2 weeks ago, when they had finally run the full accounting of time and materials, and what a fair hour's labor was worth. She had not quoted it to anyone yet. She said it out loud for the first time to this stranger at her table, and kept her face exactly as it was. He nodded once. "I'll take it." He did not negotiate. He reached into his coat. "And the rust and cream?" he said. "And that one?" He pointed to the charcoal and ochre at the back. Lily looked up from her copybook. "He bought 6 blankets before 10 in the morning. He paid the full price for each one without comment, stacked them under his arm in the straightforward way of a man who has bought a thing he wanted and is satisfied with the transaction, and said, 'I'll be back next week.'" He walked away into the market crowd before she had processed what had just happened. Lily watched him go. Then she looked at Mara. "He knew what they were worth," Lily said. Mara looked at the money in her hand. 6 blankets. Full price. "Before 10 o'clock. Yes," she said. "He did. He came back the following Saturday." She expected him, not with certainty, but with the cautious half-expectation of a woman who has been disappointed often enough to hold hope at a careful distance. She had brought 16 blankets, 2 more than the previous week, and she had priced them all at the full rate, and she had not let herself think about what it would mean if he did not come. He came at 9:30, same unhurried pace, hat in hand before he reached the table, as though the stall were a room worth removing a hat for. He looked at the new work with the same quality of attention as before. He picked up a blanket, the indigo and cream with the running water border. She had finished on Thursday, and traced the pattern edge with 2 fingers slowly. "The pattern changes here," he said. "Midway through." He showed her the place. She looked at it. He was right. The shuttle caught on a warp thread at the midpoint. "I corrected it, but the rhythm shifted." She had not expected him to find it. Nobody had ever found it before. "It's barely visible," he said. "I know where to look." He set it down. He looked at her over the blanket in a way that was not appraising. She knew the appraising look. She had been on the receiving end of it in every configuration, but simply attentive, the way he looked at the weaving. "Does it bother you?" "Everything I can see that no one else can see bothers me a little." "That's how it is with good work," he said. He picked the blanket back up. "I'll take it anyway." He bought 5 that day. Before he left, he said his name, Wyatt Cole, the coal ranch south of Copper Falls, and she gave him hers, which he already knew from the sign at the front of the table, but he received it as if he hadn't. The 3rd Saturday he arrived at 8, when she was still setting up, and he helped her carry the last 2 crates from the wagon without asking, which should have felt presumptuous, and instead felt like something she did not have an immediate word for. He stayed at the stall through most of the morning, not standing in the way of customers, not performing attendance, just present at the near end of the table in the way a person is present at something they have decided is worth their time. Lily stopped correcting him when he got the terminology wrong. This happened on the 3rd Saturday, when he asked what a particular border construction was called, and Lily said twill float, and he said, the offset one, and it wasn't quite right. Lily looked at him for a moment, and then looked back at her copybook and said nothing, which was how Lily indicated that a person had earned provisional trust and would be given room to learn. Mara saw this and said nothing either. He bought 8 blankets that 3rd Saturday. He had now purchased across 3 weeks more of her work than any customer in 7 years. She knew this because she kept a ledger. She had kept one since the beginning, a small brown one with lined pages, recording the cost of materials and the hours spent and the price received, and the gap between what she should have charged and what she had. 7 years of that gap. She looked at it sometimes the way you look at an old wound, not to reopen it, but to remember that it had been real. It was the following Thursday that he came to the house. She had not expected this. She opened the door, and he was on the porch with his hat in his hands, and an expression that indicated he had thought about whether to come and had decided and was not going to backtrack now. She let him in. He sat where she pointed, at the kitchen table, and she brought coffee and sat across from him and waited for whatever had caused a man to ride into town on a Thursday. "I want to understand the pricing," he said. She looked at him. "You raised your prices between the first Saturday and the second," he said. "Not by much, but I noticed." He turned the coffee cup in his hands once. "I want to know what they actually cost, not what you charged me. What they cost." She was quiet for a moment. Then she got up. She went to the shelf above the loom, and she took down the ledger, and she put it on the table in front of him. He read it carefully. He took longer than she expected, going back to cross-reference entries, running a thumb down the column of prices received as she had run hers down the selvage of a blanket. When he finished, he closed it. He looked at it for a moment before he looked at her. 7 years, he said. "Yes, you've been absorbing the difference yourself. There was no other way to make the market work." He was quiet for a moment. "There is now," he said. He said it in the plain, declarative way he said most things, with the particular weight of a man who makes a statement because it is true and has considered it long enough to be certain. "The hotel in Copper Falls goes through 8 winter blankets a year. The ranch house needs 4 more. And I know 2 men in the valley who have been buying inferior work from the Wichita catalog because they didn't know there was better. That's 14 guaranteed." He paused. "At your actual price?" Mara looked at him across the ledger. "That's not charity," she said. It was not a question. It was a condition. "No," he said. "It's commerce. The work is worth the price. I've been saying that since the first Saturday." She looked at the ledger, then at the loom in the next room, where the current piece was threaded and waiting. She thought about what 14 guaranteed sales at her actual price meant. The calculation completed itself in her head in the same way it always did, swift and arithmetical, and the sum was the first stable number she had looked at in 7 years. Lily appeared in the doorway from the hall, drawn by voices the way she always was, and read the room with the thoroughness of a child who has grown up in a house where the details mattered. She looked at the ledger on the table. She looked at Wyatt Cole. She looked at her mother. She went back down the hall. After a moment, Mara heard her, from behind the closed door, say to no one in particular, finally, "The merchant arrived the following Saturday. His name was Pell, and he ran the largest dry goods concern in Copper Falls, and he had been offering Mara a consignment arrangement for 3 years in the way of a man who knows he is the only available option and is willing to wait for the moment that becomes obvious to everyone else." He came to the stall just after 10, while Wyatt was at the near end of the table examining a new piece she had finished Tuesday, a double weave blanket in deep green and undyed wool, heavier than anything she had made before, the pattern a slow diagonal that took almost a full week to complete. Pell did not look at the blanket. He looked at Mara. "I'll give you 40% on everything you bring me," he said. He had evidently decided to skip the pleasantries this week, year-round. "You don't have to stand in the cold every Saturday. My price on the double weave is $4.50, Mara said. She said it in the same tone she used for all facts, even neither apologetic nor aggressive. 40% of that is $1.80. The wool alone cost $1.40. "You set your prices too high," Pell said. "That's been your problem." Wyatt Cole did not turn around. He kept his attention on the blanket in his hands, running the same 2-finger trace along the pattern edge he always used. He said nothing. "My prices are correct," Mara said. "They reflect the actual cost of the materials and a fair rate for the labor." She looked at Pell steadily. She had said versions of this to herself in the dark for 7 years. It was the first time she had said it out loud, to someone trying to talk her out of it with a witness. "I won't take less." Pell looked at her for a moment with the patient expression of a man who believes the present conversation is a negotiation, and the next one will go differently. "Think about it," he said, and left. Wyatt set the double-weave blanket down. He turned around. "$4.50 is right," he said. For a week's work on a double weave that weight, $450 is if anything conservative. She looked at him. I'm going to Hardin Creek on Tuesday, he said. There's a woman who keeps the inn there who replaces her blankets every 2 winters. I'd like to show her one of yours, if you're willing to let me take this one. He picked up the double weave. I'll bring it back unsold if she doesn't want it. But she'll want it. Mara thought about the ledger, about 7 years, about Lily in the doorway saying finally to an empty hallway, "Take it," she said. He wrapped it under his arm. He paid her the $450 before he left, without being asked, which was also not charity. It was the straightforward behavior of a man who does not require the sale to be confirmed before he pays for a thing he intends to acquire. Lily watched him cross the square. Then she looked at Mara. He'd paid before he left, she said. I know. Papa used to do that, Lily said, not with grief. With the quiet recognition of a child noting that a category she had thought was closed had a new entry in it. Mara said nothing. She straightened the remaining blankets on the table and looked at the gap where the double weave had been, and felt, in the place where the arithmetic usually lived, something that was not a number. He asked her on a Wednesday morning. She was at the loom, the new piece, a commission he had brought back from the Hardin Creek innkeeper who had wanted 2 matching blankets in a particular green, and he had come to the house to confirm the specifications, which was a legitimate reason to come and which she had accepted at face value when he knocked. He sat at the kitchen table while she worked, which had become unremarkable in the 2 months since the first Saturday, his presence in the kitchen while she wove being a thing that had happened often enough to have settled into the ordinary. He watched her work for a while. Then he said, without preamble and without positioning it as anything other than what it was, I'd like you to marry me. The shuttle went on its way across the warp. She caught it on the other side, beat the weft down, sent back. The loom had its own answer for silence. The rhythm did not stop. Why, she said, not unkindly, she simply needed the word. Because you are the most competent person I have met in 43 years, he said, and the most honest, and because the work you do is the finest of its kind in the county, and you have spent 7 years charging the wrong price for it, and I would like, for whatever time I have left, to be the person who knows what it's actually worth. The shuttle crossed. Lily would have questions, Mara said. I'd expect that. The weft came back. She beat it down. She'll want to know if you understand the difference between a plain weave and a twill, Mara said. I've been studying, he said. She stopped the shuttle. She looked at him across the half-finished blanket, this large and patient man who had come to a market table in October and picked up a blanket and looked at it the way it deserved to be looked at, and had been looking at everything she made with that same honest attention ever since. Then ask Lily first, she said. If she says yes, I will. He went and found Lily, who was in the back garden turning the late-season soil, and whatever passed between them lasted 11 minutes. She heard Lily's voice twice and his voice 3 times, and then Lily came to the kitchen doorway and leaned in the frame and looked at her mother with the expression of a 10-year-old who has just conducted an assessment and found the result satisfactory. He knows the difference, Lily said, between a plain weave and a twill, between a plain weave and a twill, and between a selvage and a cut edge, and he knew which one of your pieces was the best without being told. She paused. I told him the Green Commission is underpriced. What did he say? That he'd fix it, Lily said. So I said yes. Mara looked at her daughter for a moment. Then she looked at the half-finished blanket on the loom. Then she looked out the kitchen door at Wyatt Cole, standing in the back garden in the October light, waiting, hat in hand again, with the unhurried patience of a man who has decided and is not in a hurry because he is not going anywhere. She went to the door. Yes, she said. They were married in November, before the hard frost in the Copper Falls church. Lily stood beside her mother in the dress Mara had made for her from a fine blue wool she had been saving since the previous spring for something worth the cloth. She gave Lily the blue dress and made her own from a deep ochre, the color she had used in the blanket Wyatt bought the first day, the one he had seen from across the square and known. The hotel in Copper Falls took 8 blankets that winter. The Cole Ranch House took 4. The Hardin Creek innkeepers sent a letter in January ordering 2 more, and with the letter she included the name of a woman in Billings who kept a boarding house and had seen the matching set and wanted to know who made them. Mara wrote down the name in the ledger. Under the expenses column, which she had kept for 7 years, she drew a single line. She opened to the next page. She wrote at the top, what the work is worth. She started a new account. The loom ran through the winter and through every season that followed, the shuttle crossing and returning in the particular rhythm that Lily had grown up hearing, and that Wyatt came to know the way you come to know the sounds of your own house, as a sign that everything is as it should be. The blankets went to the hotel and the ranch house and the Billings boarding house, and in time, to places further than those, because quality travels when it finally has the pricing to match, and Mara Finch Cole's work was of a quality that the market could not indefinitely fail to recognize. Lily, at 14, learned to keep the accounts herself. She was precise and fair, and she did not undervalue anything which her mother had taught her by example across 7 years of survival. And by one particular Saturday morning in October, when a man picked up a blanket and looked at it honestly and paid the real price without being asked, and everything that had been held at the wrong number finally found the right one. Mara Finch had spent 7 years at the edge of enough, making beautiful things and selling them for less than they were worth, because that was what the market would bear, and she had believed that the market was the whole of the judgment. It was not. It had never been. The market was simply the only witness she'd had until that Saturday. She kept weaving. The work had always been worth the price. What changed was who was there to confirm it.